Hello, this is NY4G with another emergency preparedness video, this time about emergency power. When all else fails, amateur radio. Amateur radio has been used in recent times for public service during Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico and in the western wildfires. You certainly need to be willing, ready, and able. Willingness is not enough. You need to have the skills and you need emergency power. There are many ways to develop skills and the ability to use portable operation and portable power through activities like summits on the air, parks on the air, and even participation in amateur radio emergency services. They have drills that do support for hospitals and law enforcement, and even field day. If you can help set up for field day, it'll help generate some of these skills. Having the means for portable power for field operations is one of the keys. And you can practice your radio operation during power outages. And the other is the ability to exchange or communicate via email without using the internet is an important skill. But the details of that are out of the scope of this video. Here are our main emergency power options. We have fossil fuel-powered electric generators, either diesel, gasoline, or propane, and the other one are batteries, either internal or external to the radio. And when it comes to external batteries, your main candidates are flooded lead acid, sealed lead acid, and as a subset of that, the AGM type sealed lead acid. And there are lithium-based chemistries, and there's lithium polymer and lithium ion, which is mainly used on laptops, but for emergency power and backup power, lithium iron phosphate is the choice for on the lithium based chemistries. On the fossil fuel power generator front, the best are the inverter types because they are pure sine wave, and the inverters are relatively low noise. If you get a quality one, their weight is reasonably light, about 60 pounds, and they cost between $600 to $1,200. And Honda probably makes the flagship of the inverter generators, but they're kind of pricey. In terms of noise, Honda is probably one of the quieter ones. So in terms of stealth, they're not. The noise is. You could still tell that there's something there, even though the noise is low. So stealth is it's not. Noise is still there. When it comes to no noise, batteries are the king. And in terms of batteries, you have choices between deep cycle, absorbed glass material. They weigh about 65 pounds, but they can only be discharged to 50% depth of discharge. So in order to get, for example, 100 amp hours, you need two of them because you can only discharge it to 50 amp hours before you have to start recharging it again. Here's a comparison of cycles. They're typically good for about 900 cycles if you observe strictly the depth of discharge rule, that you don't go down below 50% depth of discharge so that you can get the maximum cycles. Commercial lithium iron phosphates, Battleborn is probably the premier brand, and they come with a long warranty, and they advertise between 3,000 to 5,000 cycles. So on a cycle life cycle cost basis, they're probably much cheaper than deep cycle batteries. Then there is the do-it-yourself lithium iron phosphate. Of course, when you do it yourself, you have no warranty because you're taking on all that risk in terms of building the quality yourself, as opposed to relying on somebody else to put the quality in. But you can get it much cheaper, or you can. The risk reward is that you don't have to spend as much money as getting a commercial lithium iron phosphate battery like Battleborn. Now here are a couple of generators that I've seen on in person at Northern Tool, and a couple of screenshots of commercial batteries. On the left is the Battleborn lithium iron phosphate 100 amp hour, and on the right side is the same 100 amp hours but from a deep cycle battery. Of course, you'll need two of them to get usable 100 amp hours. And here's the do-it-yourself version that I put together. It's called it's a lithium iron phosphate battery box, 100 amp hours. I put in a voltmeter, 4 20 amp power pole connectors, 2 USB connectors, and a 50 amp SB50 power pole for let's say connecting it to a larger inverter. I put in an on and off switch, and there's a 100 amp battery management system with low temperature cutoff inside, which I'll show you later. So these are actually 4 3.2 volt cells in series, and they're made from 20 32650 cylindrical cells in parallel in a 5x4 array. And the cost for just the battery and the BMS is about $335. Now the batteries are on the left there. They're being set up, and they're being top balanced so that they are all equalized before they're put in series. And so they're fully charged up to 3.65 volts, and this step is can take a little bit of time because it takes a while, all those amp hours, and it's on a constant voltage power supply, so it takes quite a bit of time to actually get them to get up to 3.65 volts. And so I put the batteries in the battery box and I connect them in series, and as you can see in the voltmeter reading, the voltage is 14.24. The next step is to connect the BMS balance leads, and here you can see there are balance lead connections to the connections of the series connections. Here are some screenshots of the power pole installation and the voltmeter, the USB and cigarette lighter plug, 12 volt plug adapter. And here's the on and off switch. Here's the BMS placed inside the battery box, and all the connections are using a fuse block which connects the power poles and the other peripherals to the battery. Here's the wiring from the fuse block to the cover. And the last step is to test everything after everything's connected. So testing the 6 gauge Anderson power poles, the 12 gauge Anderson power poles, connecting an inverter, and then making sure that there's current being generated by using a heat gun. You can also test the 12-volt socket, and in my case, I used a mini fridge or freezer. Tested USB charging. Tested low temperature cutoff on a glass of ice water. Test the overcharging cutoff. Conduct a capacity test at 20% of the maximum discharge rate. And then lastly, I connected a radio, both with direct DC and also using an inverter and a power supply. Here's the 12-volt socket showing that it works. It's powering my ISCO portable freezer. And here's my radio being connected, and it runs on 8 watts at idle and 223 watts on key down. And that the power is being measured by this device over here. So I could run this key down for about 5.5 hours, and using CW, which is a 33% duty cycle, I can run it for about 17 hours. And single sideband, which is a 25% duty cycle mode, I can probably run it for close to 22 hours. Now, you can also connect an inverter and then connect a power supply to the inverter. Because of the inefficiencies of such an arrangement, it takes a little bit more power on key down, 277 watts, 50 watts more than direct DC. And you can operate it for not as long a time. You lose about close to 2.25 hours on single sideband and about 3 hours on CW. Here's a video of the key down just to show just how much power it's consuming. And if you can see that video, it's somewhat fuzzy, but that's 273 watts, or I think it peaked at about 277 watts. Let's see that again. Yeah, it flashed for 277 and then settled down at 273. Here's another video of a simulated power outage. Here I am carrying the battery box into the ham shack. I'm supposed to have a QSO with a friend who practices CW with me at 6:45 most mornings. I'm wearing a headlamp, and that's where the light is coming from, since there is no power. Turning on the radio. It's already tuned to 14.105. Not going to show you the entire QSO, just the initial exchange. Well, that's about it for the video. Hopefully this gave you a good sampling for what you can do for emergency power, and give you the ideas for building your own battery box.